GSAP is one of my favorite libraries for perfecting animations in JavaScript. You might have heard of it before and seen that it had one small issue. Parts of it were paid for. Well, not anymore. Webflow has made GSAP and its plugins completely free, which is absolutely awesome. So let's take a look, and I'll even use GSAP to recreate one of my favorite effects that I've seen on a site lately, which is on the GTA 6 site, which was actually made using GSAP. Now, there's literally too much in this library to teach in a single video, so before we get to some of the basics, here are some of my favorite demos of its power. The first one is this Film Foundation site here, which shows off how easy GSAP makes scroll animations. As you can see, it's just a really beautiful site that works when you scroll. All of these animations flow up really nicely, and everything has this really cool 3D feel as I'm scrolling down the page and looking at all of these individual films. There's also this really cool design and code portfolio here, which uses parts of GSAP like the Observer and Motion Path. As you can see, just a really cool interactive site, and it has a few demos on here as well of things that you could animate with GSAP. Number 4 is my favorite. You can see we've got some SVG morphing, we've got some motion path with the text moving across. You can literally animate anything with GSAP from the basics all the way up to really advanced things. If you want to see more awesome demos, head over to the GSAP site and go to their showcase section, and you'll see so many cool examples of the power of GSAP. Let's get back to the basics though and see how all of these animations start in GSAP and just how easy the GSAP library is to use. All animations start with what's called a tween. A tween does the animation work. There's 4 types of tween that you'll come across. 2, which just takes an element from wherever it is on the page to where you specify. So in this case, we're taking anything with the circle class, we're translating it 40 pixels, and we're changing its fill from wherever it started to blue. Then we have from here, which again is just going to take the circle from where you specify to where it should end up on that page. From to means you specify both the start and the end. And then set here is just from to, but essentially instant. So you can see how simple doing a basic animation like this is with GSAP, and it's worth noting in this object here where you animate these properties, you can animate basically anything. You can even provide custom properties in here, which is absolutely insane. Then where you want to specify your element, here we're using a class name, you could also use the ID or even the object itself, the element, anything like that to specify what you want to animate. It really is a super flexible library. As a quick example of animate everything and also custom properties, as you can see here, I have an object which simply has a count key, and that is set to 1. Then in GSAP, I say I want to animate that object, and I want to set the count custom property to 10. Then all I'm doing is using an onUpdate from GSAP to console log out that count every time it counts upwards. So if I go ahead and rerun this animation, you can see that we're logging out the count, it starts at 1, and it counts all the way up to 10 on our custom object here. So you really can animate anything in JavaScript. Some other really cool things that you get as well are some special properties like yo-yo and repeat here. A repeat of -1 just means that my animation is going to continue infinitely, and if we set it to yo-yo, it means it's going to go back and forth instead of restarting from the start, animating over to here and then going back, so we get this nice yo-yo effect. Another thing GSAP makes super simple is handling multiple animations and when they start. We have 2 main ways that we can control this. The first way is quite simple. Say we had 3 boxes here, which each have the same class of box. If we animate that class by translating it 500 pixels in the X direction and set the duration to 3, you can see that all of them are going to move together. But if that's not what we want, and we don't want to specify it by the ID or some other class name, well, instead of that, if we wanted them to start one after each other, we can just add on a property here called stagger. Then we set the stagger time to the duration, hit save, and as you can see, each one is going to start one after another. Stagger is essentially seeing the order that the elements are in, and then it's just staggering the animation based on whichever seconds that you've put here. So if I set this to something like 0.5, you can see we're going to get a cool effect where each one is starting half a second after the other. So this is quite a basic way to control when each animation starts. But if you want some more custom control, that is when you can reach for a timeline. Now to create a timeline, it's very simple. All you need to do is say gsap.timeline, and you can also pass in some custom properties here as well. But then when you want to add on animations, all you do is apply your tween to the timeline instead of GSAP. So instead of doing gsap.to here, we're doing timeline.to, and you can see you can even chain these as well. In this case, we're going to start our green animation first, and that's going to take 2 seconds. Then when that animation is done, the next one starts, and so on. So you can see those boxes animated one after another, even though we had different durations here, something we wouldn't have been able to do with stagger. But this doesn't just allow you to start an animation one after another, we can also begin to control when animations start by using the position parameters. These allow you to control what time an animation starts on your timeline. All we need to do is after one of our animations here, so in my case the purple box, after the parameters that we want to animate, I'll add a comma, and then we can add in a value. Now this can be absolute time, so in this case this is going to start 1 second into my timeline. So if I hit save here, you can see that the green box starts animating, and that's going to take 2 seconds. But before it's even finished, 1 second in, this purple box begins to animate, and that means that they're actually going to end at the exact same time. And then the orange box just carries on from the last animation and starts when the purple one is done. You can even set this to gap properties though. So in this case, this is actually going to be 1 second after the end of the timeline, which usually means after the previously inserted animation. So if I go ahead and refresh this now, you see our first animation sends off, then our second one waits a second, and then that's when it triggers. You can also set this to a negative delay as well, or a negative gap. So refresh that, you can see that starting 1 second into our timeline, because the first one takes 2 seconds, so our timeline is now 2 seconds long, and then we say start this minus 1 seconds into that timeline, and then the third one isn't added yet, which is why that isn't animating until after this animation is done. The timeline is extended each time we add an animation on. That's nearly all of the basics covered, but one final thing to mention is you also have great control over all of these animations as well. As you can see up in the timeline here, I set the paused property to true when we first start out, so if I refresh the page here, you can see the animation isn't triggering. Then I have a button down here to start playing the animation, and all I need to do is call the play method on the animation, and if the progress of the animation itself is finished, I can just restart that animation. So now when I click play, my animation starts. You have super powerful primitives for controlling and animating. If you need to get even more complex than that, there's plugins like Scroll Trigger, Scroll Smoother, Split Text, and loads more. Scroll Trigger is one of my absolute favorites. It lets you create really awesome scroll effects on your web pages. And as I said earlier, I want to create one of them that I saw on the GTA 6 page, which also uses GSAP. As you can see when we scroll down here, this video is actually scrubbing. I just think that's a really cool effect. This isn't a load of images being rendered in. This is actually a video under the hood. So I've made a really primitive recreation of that where I've taken the video from the GTA 6 landing page here, given an ID of scroll vid, put it inside of a div here called scroll content. Then in my script, I'm using GSAP. I'm registering the plugin scroll trigger from GSAP. Then I'm getting my video by the element ID here, and then I'm animating that video. What we can actually do when we animate that video is we can animate anything, as we said, so we can animate the current time. So this will be set to 0 initially, but we want to animate this all the way up to the video duration. Then we use scroll trigger here, so from the scroll trigger plugin, and we can actually just set a property on this called scrub equals true. What this means is now when I scroll, it's just going to be doing a scrub effect, which controls where we are in the animation. So if I scroll downwards here, you can see the video is playing, and if I scroll back up, it's going in reverse. So simple to get an effect like that in a few lines of code. Now, I probably wouldn't ship this one to production. I believe that the GTA 6 site actually uses a canvas video approach with GSAP, but it shows how easy you can do really cool things like this. There we go. If pricing was stopping you from using GSAP before, go ahead and give this a go and let me know what you're creating down in the comments. While you're there, subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.